All right, y'all. Welcome to video number 47. We're going to be talking about culture, cultivating culture, even. Um, Last video, we're talking about the toroidal field and how my mouse visible at the time. So let's kind of go over it real briefly, and then we'll dive right into culture and try and keep this pretty short. I'm still struggling with it. This is very much exploratory, but this toroidal model, the center here, this is source, called the eternal God, and from source, well, I'll say it's an ocean of invisible light. But from here, potential, living information flows through what I like to call the tree of life. And the tree of life spreads that information out into this area on the outside of the ball, which I call the field of potential. And this is where our reality is. We reside within this space. Now we are in source. We are anchored to source, tethered to source, radiate from source. We vibrate from source, however you would like to think of this. Our avatars, our bodies, our mind, our body, our thoughts, our emotions all belong to this place. And we're just along for the ride. It's sort of like what would you call it? A consciousness surfboard. That's what your body is. We're riding this thing. We're riding the field of experience. And as we interact with this information flowing from source through the tree of life, our experience returns back to source through the bottom here, through, of course, the tree of knowledge. It's an easy way to understand the toroidal field in our reality. And I'll say it again, like I said last time. I'm not saying this is where we live. It's a model for the way it appears to work. That's all we're trying to do. We have no idea. We are profoundly limited beings. These surfboards can't do very much, but we can try and figure it out. And so this model seems to function. The old model, and it's still a relevant model. This was the original model that I did way back in video, 2 or 3. This is what I call the consciousness model now. The eternal God is here, made up of knowledge and energy, power, and has a nature. This nature element is it's like the Tao. It's actually the critical part to understanding how this reality seems to work. Now, these angels and demons here, these are what I call the lesser gods. But because sometimes they serve the function of good or evil, which is, we're not getting into that. I do have videos on those if you'd like to see where I'm at with that. But that's all, they're the same. So this is things like love and hate and fear, and all the way down to like concepts like flight and swim and this sort of thing. And then the mother and father are consciousness. And I believe in this bifurcated consciousness, just like, well, it's personification of, information, data, knowledge, whatever, is the father. And I like to say it is the breadth of knowledge. Think of like a Lion King kind of thing, and takes him up on the hill, and he's like, all that you can see, you will rule one day. This is the breadth. And then the mother, of course, is the depth. And that's where potential comes from. That's where new thoughts and ideas rise up from the deep, this sort of thing. And together they are the consciousness of source, of the eternal God. And then the living God, of course, it's you. We'll just call it that. And we have the same thing. We have emotions and drives. We have thoughts and ideas, and these things can possess us, and they are the angels and demons of this reality. And it's through mastering our consciousness, our left and right hemisphere, and understanding the nature of our reality, understanding the nature of our being. This is how we, I suppose in a Buddhist way, is to overcome suffering, to achieve enlightenment, if you want to look at it that way. This is how you find peace and happiness. This is how you find true grace in this world. And this line here represents the divine mirror. We are a reflection of the eternal. But back to the toroidal field. I just wanted to refresh the memory of everybody who's watched that video, which is nobody. Sorry, hold on. So toroidal field and culture. So if you go back to the very beginning of the Bible, you have God hovering over the deep. That's what this is. The deep is source. The deep is also, imagine the Gnostics have this idea that, God was source. And suddenly there's a thought that overflowed the containment that was God and spilled into this reality. Actually spilled into the heavens, but all that aside, it's called Barbello. Trika, which is a Vedantic philosophy, they have a concept called spanda, which was like a wiggle or a vibration that caused the first emanation of God into what we would call reality. What kickstarted this whole thing. So in the middle here, we have this ocean of invisible light, source, something, Barbello or Spanda, something kicked this whole entire system off. And when the first waters flowed, when the first potential flowed, everything was basic and simple. There was no experience. And so as God hovered over the deep, simple things were called into being, like land and whatnot. And through time, these things evolved. And the evolution isn't like biological or chemical or anything. They evolve through our experience. So as choices are made, directions are chosen, this sort of thing, what arises is the potential of that choice, like a choose your own adventure kind of a book. So if you pick to go one way, then the story traverses in that direction, or you can go a different direction. Our reality seems to work like that. This is how culture works. So over time, the complexity of this reality has evolved. So if you take the first humans, perhaps we all started out as a tribe somewhere. And our environment probably had a lot to do with how we decided we were going to get along with one another. You'd have to assume it's some sort of like family relationship sort of thing. Again, just speculating. But imagine over time, humanity begins to spread. And you see, sometimes they go to mountain regions, and the culture, their society has to function in a certain way in order to survive in that environment. Perhaps they go to a desert or a high plains area. They become nomadic, relying on horses and, herding animals and this sort of thing. A culture develops around that. Maybe they go down to the ocean and they begin to fish and become seafaring. And so their interaction with each other and with the environment, they make certain choices. They begin to develop certain rules. And if we always remember our attention is the currency of our reality, as potential and knowledge flow through the tree of life, we engage with it. The engagement is your attention. it feeds it. It's the choice you make in the choose your own adventure. And so the choice you don't make fades back into source. And then the one that we do choose goes into source, it does whatever source does with it, and then provides you what the next options are going to be. So take like today, I mowed my lawn. If I went out tomorrow morning and my grass was tall again, I'd be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. We would not have a functioning reality. But every day I go out, my grass is a little bit taller. That makes sense. That's the potential that comes up because of the choice I made to mow the lawn every morning. New potential, new potential, new potential until I have to mow my lawn again. Or say things like, let's say you're an ocean faring community, and all of a sudden you find yourselves out in the middle of the desert when you wake up one morning. Your culture wouldn't function. Your reality wouldn't function. This is what I mean by as potential or as knowledge returns to source and comes back as potential, it has to match the current activity of the people that are involved. And again, it's powered by your attention. So as humanity would spread out to all these different environments, certain things become more important. Say if you have winter, you have to think about the future far more than if you, say, are in a tropical rainforest where there's food around you all the time. Weather's never going to get you. You just kind of got to worry about the snakes and whatnot. But if you're a nomadic people that are in the high desert, you are definitely going to be very aware of the future. And so the choices that we make and the way that we structure our society through the daily interaction with our fellow human beings and our environment creates what we call culture. And what I would like folks to understand is these are collective choices that we all make together, again, by how we utilize our attention. You see, in Gnostic Vedanta, we wish to become meek. And meek I am defining as, meek is like how you live your life with this understanding of Gnostic Vedanta, the philosophy. And we are trying to model ourselves after the ancient gardener. You see, Adam and Eve were gardeners. The first kings of like the Babylon empires and whatnot, they were gardeners. That's where the old green god that you see pop up now. If you're in the seeking community, you've seen a lot of videos suddenly about the green man. And that's because someone who was able to make things grow was considered to be wise. And therefore, they would be the best leader for that culture. And thinking about the green man, it just made me lose my way on where we're going with this culture and our interaction. So the point of this video is as all of us make choices, eventually you begin to understand that the next possibility stems from our choices. And in time, people have learned how to manipulate this. It's things called propaganda. Movies. Movies are made as an attempt to introduce new ideas, to try and change the way people view the world. By engaging your attention, they try and feed these concepts. Your news, it works this way. The newspaper, they point out one story and don't show you another story, trying to feed what they believe is relevant and allowing what they don't want you to know or don't want you to see to slowly wither and fade because it is not fed attention. This is one of what you would call magic. And magic is real because this is how it works. By learning to guide other people's attention you can guide and manipulate culture. So there's the interaction with your environment, our interaction with each other. And then eventually you understand that our participation changes the potential of tomorrow. If I don't mow my lawn, pretty soon, I got to deal with my neighbors, and perhaps my mower won't be strong enough to do it, but tired. So, culture. As cultures begin to move in directions, perhaps guided by somebody who wants it to go somewhere, or a group of people, or perhaps it's just, say, like natural events. Think like Hurricane Katrina or something. These things can have drastic effects upon culture. But let's say you're in an environment where you have a lot of people attempting to use your attention against you to gain their own power. There are two bolts, two rods. That is governance and religion. These are the tools that are utilized. These are the tools that wish to use, which no other way to get around it is what you'd have to call magic, to change the potential of tomorrow. And as the mass begins to go one way, the potential that returns to us has to move with it. So if politics, say, become more and more extreme, well, the potential that arises has to match that extremeness. Extremity. It has to match this. This is how you get movements like, say, all the crazy guys of World War II. These were just natural. It was fed day by day. Perhaps people were attempting to manipulate it through some sort of dark magic kind of thing. But these things swing, and you must know that you can always stop the swing and bring it back. You have that power. It is the power of your attention. You help cultivate culture. Together, we do cultivate culture. So, most folks would say that it's starting to get a little extreme. If you genuinely wish to see things returned to grace, to beauty, to reverence, to peace, and actual human flourishing, you will never do so in a pew or a booth. Never. You do so by cultivating culture, going out every day and making something grow. The Jordan Peterson thing. Make your room beautiful. Make your house beautiful. Make your yard beautiful. Have beautiful relationships with your spouse, your children, your neighbors, your family, your community. Nourish these things with your attention. Because I can tell you, there's a lot of powers out there that are vying for your attention. And as these things swing to greater and greater extremes, at some point in time, attention is no longer strong enough to keep it there, and it crashes. These have been the great resets of the past. All you have to do is dig into the ground and you find the cultures that did not survive. These folks were just like you and me, but their culture became unstable, became more extreme, the potential that arises through the tree of life becomes more and more extreme until it quite frankly can't stay up at that extreme height anymore, and it just crushes everybody. Now, are there folks that want this? I don't know. I don't like to speak for other people. But know this: this is how we cultivate culture. And I see a lot of folks online now that say, oh, we're not here to make this place a better place. And this could be true. But I'm telling you right now, you can. It's a choice. Or you let it collapse. Cultivate the culture you want, my friends. Until then,